I'm Paul McDade, an actor and editor working in the TV and film industry in LA, and that's Yoda in the background.
And I'm Liz McDade, Paul's sister, and a huge Columbo fan and small business owner living in Santa Cruz, California. And this is Trenchcoat Cigar Peugeot Wandering with Columbo. In each episode, we'll bring you a little Hollywood history, glamour, and behind the scenes as we walk you through Columbo, one of America's greatest TV detective series.
Yeah.
And today we're going to be talking about Season 2, Episode 2, Etude in Black, which aired on September 17th, 1972. This is a good one. I'm excited to get into this one, Paul.
Yeah, this is a classic.
Yeah,
one of the most famous for sure.
For sure. And tonight we are having, as our drink and our snack, we're having white wine and canapes, or canapes, I guess, however you want to say that, which are featured in the episode. And a canape, I had to look it up.
Me too.
Is basically a small, it's basically a small piece of bread or pastry with some kind of savory topping, and it's often served with drinks at a reception or a formal party. So, Paul, what did you put together for your canape for tonight?
Well, St. John, my lovely wife, she got a variety of gluten-free little toast pieces with dates, some cheese that's going to be French cheese or something, and then cucumbers with pimento cheese, and then artichokes with some Dubliner cheese. So a variety. And I'll send you a photograph here that I took some earlier. So what about you?
So I am having a croissant that I've cut into smaller pieces from Gail's Bakery, which is down the street from my house. It's a delicious local bakery. And then I also have Dubliner cheese on my croissant and some sun-dried tomato pesto.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And it's actually really good. It's really good. And the wine I'm having, it's actually a rosé because I don't have any white wine in the house right now.
Oh, Liz.
And I didn't have time to get any.
They screwed up.
So I'm having a rosé. It's not a fancy rosé, but it's yummy. It's Sobone Estate 2020 from Amador County. I believe this is California wine. Yeah.
Oh, good. Yeah, this is really good white wine. I forget the name of it, though. It tastes very nice. I sent you the picture, too.
Oh, my gosh. Your canapes are beautiful, Paul.
Thank you, St. John.
So good. Yeah, nice work. So we'll put these pictures on our Instagram, which is at Trenchcoat Cigar. You can see Paul's canapes and my canapes, which are not nearly this beautiful, but they are tasty, and yours look really nice. I'm super impressed. All right, so we got our snacks, and before we move into the summary of this, we have our snacks and our drinks. And before we move into our summary, we wanted to go to our new segment, which we just started in our last episode, which is our listener contributions.
Yay!
Yay! We're still taking name suggestions, so please email us at trenchcoatcigar@gmail.com if you have any thoughts on our name for listener contributions. We can just keep calling it listener contributions, too. But we've gotten some really great contributions from listeners, including noticing things that we missed in episodes. Also, folks have shared with us what Columbo means to them and how the show is important to them. And those have been really awesome to read. So I'm going to share one contribution, and then Paul will share another. And so one of our listeners, Heinz, forwarded me an email that was about a new book that's all about Columbo that just came out this fall of 2021. So thank you, Heinz, so much for sharing that with us. It's called Shooting Columbo, and it's by David Koenig I think is how you pronounce his name. And I ordered this book, but I have not yet got my hands on it. But it's got tons of behind the scenes information about Columbo. So it's probably of interest to you if you're listening to us talk. So you might want to check that out. And I ordered it on Amazon. I try not to do a lot of that, but I was kind of in a hurry to get it. So, but maybe your local bookstore carries it too. So,
yeah, I ordered it as well.
And then Paul, you were going to share. Oh, you did?
Yeah, it looks great. They had a photograph like of the crew. You could see the crew filming. And he mentioned somebody interviewed him, the writer, David Koning. Yeah, I'm not sure you pronounce it either. And he said, he mentioned the Etude in Black about the improvisation and stuff in the interview. I don't know if you noticed that. But yeah, I can't wait to see I'm sure it's amazing.
So we'll be sharing some tidbits from that book, I'm sure, in our upcoming episodes.
Yeah, another person sent in a email to us, and I'll quote just a teeny bit from it. It's from Marty, one of our listeners. I've known Columbo all my life. I remember it being a part of the NBC mystery movie. I was in my early teens at the time, so it was very low on my list of things I wanted to watch. But I have memories of my mom watching and yelling at the TV whenever the killer offered to help Columbo. No, don't do it, she would yell. But he really appreciated it as he got older. So thanks, Marty.
Thank you, Marty. And thank you, Heinz. And thank you to our other listeners who have also written. We hopefully will get to share everybody's contributions, memories, what Columbo has meant to them in our upcoming episodes. So if you've written to us and we haven't gotten to share it yet, I'm sure that we will in an upcoming episode. And if you also have trivia or interesting things that you notice in an episode, feel free to send us that too. So we'll be recording more episodes from season 2 coming up. So send us your contributions about season 2. But if we miss something, you can definitely point that out as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's move on to our episode summary. And this episode, the summary is that there is the conductor of the Los Angeles Orchestra who murders, his name is Alex Benedict. He murders his mistress, Jennifer Wells, because she is trying to force him to leave his wife and be with her. He tries to make the murder look like a suicide by setting things up in her apartment and typing up a suicide note. Columbo shows up on the scene after her death is reported to the police, and he feels almost right away, he seems to feel like this can't be a suicide. And then Alex Benedict shows up. So Columbo focuses on this conductor pretty early on in the investigation.
Yeah.
Anything that I should add, or you want to add, to the summary, Paul?
Sure. Alex is also married to the daughter of the lady who helps run the Los Angeles Philharmonic.
All right, so we're going to go through this episode, and we're going to focus on some of our favorite moments and scenes and costumes. And we should start at the beginning, which is Alex Benedict sitting at his home on his white baby grand piano, smoking a cigarette, looking pretty sharp in his light striped sport coat, dark turtleneck, dark pants. And then he heads to his study to drink some kind of brown liquor and listen to his symphony. And he has stationery from Jennifer Wells that he has typed a suicide note onto. And this is filmed in Pasadena. This house is in Pasadena. It's 1365 South Oakland Avenue. Paul, this is only about a mile away from you. So you need to get out there and take a picture in front of this home.
Awesome.
It's a beautiful house. It's got these beautiful columns in the front, and it's been used in a lot of other shows and movies. So Murder, She Wrote episode was filmed here. This was used in the TV show Benson, the movie show American Gigolo. This was the front scene of the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air TV series. And then Paul, one of your favorite movies featured this house, and that is the Beverly Hills Chihuahua 2. The one where Poppy and Chloe prove that family always sticks together.
I only like the
You're
Pup
always
Star.
talking about that movie.
Only the Pup Star ones. The Pup Star ones I love.
So good. So yeah, it's a pretty classic house. And so the book that we just mentioned in the promo materials from David Koenig, he took a photo in front of this home for his promotional materials for his new book. And let me just tell you a little bit about this house. It's a 10-bedroom, 10-bathroom home, 15,000 square feet. The last time it sold was in 1982 for $32,000, which seems really low. That's like a ridiculously low price, even in those dollars. It's only valued at $7 million today, which I know is a lot, but it's probably worth a lot more than that considering how large it is and where it is. But it has a really beautiful wide staircase in the front entrance with a giant stained glass dome skylight at the top of the staircase. Just a really beautiful home. So is there anything else you wanted to share about that? I was going to kind of move on to the mechanics.
Him playing that little short piece in the beginning, I really like that. I don't know if that's something he composed or would it be considered an etude, because I think an etude is like something to help piano players perform. John Cassavetes was the lead in a show where he was the detective, sort of, so to speak. He was a private investigator. It was a black and white show called Johnny Staccato, and he was a piano player in that. And excellent series. There was one episode called The Shop of the Four Winds where at the very end of the episode, he does a similar type thing. He sort of solved the crime and he goes to the piano at the very end and he plays like something really quickly, really beautifully, not as crazy and dark as what he does in this. So I thought that was an interesting sort of parallel between something in two completely different television shows.
Yeah, that's cool. I didn't realize that. We'll have to put a link to that episode in our Instagram post on this episode. So, and that scene really sets up the fact that he's, planning this murder too. He's got this fake suicide note that he's written. So the next scene is at his auto mechanics. It's called Mike Goodman's, and it's in Van Nuys. And apparently, I forget where I saw this, but apparently there was a Mike Goodman's auto mechanic shop that focused on foreign cars in Van Nuys. So I wasn't able to really verify that for sure, but this might have been a real place in the 70s.
There's a building there now. I've seen some up-to-date pictures of that area, like a really tall building where I think it would have been.
Yeah. So Mike, the mechanic, is working on a car. And this moment has always stuck with me. I don't know if you noticed this moment, but as Alex Benedict pulls in with his Jaguar, Mike, the mechanic, cuts his finger on something under the car that he's working on, and his hands are pretty greasy. They're pretty black and, dirty from doing his work. He sticks his hand in his mouth because it started to bleed, even though his hand is like kind of covered in like a black grease. And that moment just always made me cringe a little bit.
He's in a lot of Columbos, that guy.
Yes, Mike Lally is in about 25 Columbo episodes. And get this, he is uncredited in every single one.
He's good. He's really good.
Mike Goodman, the mechanic, puts his filthy hand in his mouth, and Benedict rolls up in his Jaguar, tells Mike his car's got some problems, some vague problems, and Mike takes it. I says he'll fix it. Then his wife rolls up in the Rolls Royce, played by Blythe Danner, mom to Gwyneth Paltrow. And yeah, we can talk more about her in a future scene where she has a little bit more to say, but I thought she just did an amazing job in this episode.
Yeah.
Overall. So if we move on to the next scene, I wanted to just chat a little bit about the Hollywood Bowl. So he gets taken from the mechanics to the Hollywood Bowl, and he's going to prepare for the concert. And I just wanted to point out the costumes here briefly. They're not super exciting. Janice is wearing a solid yellow blouse with a solid blue casual jacket on top and a matching blue leather purse. So she definitely looks sharp. It's not quite as interesting as some of the costumes from season 1. And again, this is the different costume designer named Grady Hunt who took over from Burton Miller. Burton Miller's costume designs tend to be a little bit more interesting. And I think Grady Hunt just really liked solid colors. It kind of reminds me of like theater, like sometimes it feels like in theater you have like really simpler costumes, like more solids and basics. I don't know.
I liked Cassavetes' outfits, like the one with the turtleneck and it looks good. I think, still looks really sharp.
Yeah, I agree. Everybody looked good for sure. It was just a little bit more boring. It was like, I don't know, a little bit, just a little bit more, a little less interesting than Burton Miller's costumes.
Yeah.
That's all. And I could kind of see his, I don't know if it's his style or what he thought the costumes should be, but I can kind of see a thread of these like solid colors, sometimes with like a white trim or white stitching or something, but they're very simple and they're more casual than the Burton Miller costumes. All right, so let's move on, Paul, to the apartment scene where at Jennifer Wells's apartment. So this is Alex Benedict's mistress, and she is sitting at her piano practicing or playing piano, and she is also wearing very solid colors. It's a pink and green block dress where you have like different areas of the outfit have different solid colors. And she was played by Anjanette Comer. I don't know, Paul, did you want to say anything about Anjanette? I didn't really look her up.
It might be Comer. Yeah, she was really well known for a movie called The Loved One. Our dad saw that when it came out in the theater, and he saw it again actually when he came to visit me recently. We watched it together, and it's a really interesting, funny, dark comedy directed by Tony Richardson, and she's the lead next to Robert Morse, who a lot of people recognize from a ton of stuff. And Terry Southern is one of the writers, Evelyn Waugh, Christopher Isherwood. But she is excellent in that movie. It's very detailed, strange, all kinds of really good actors, Roddy McDowall, Rod Steiger, James Coburn, John Gielgud, Tab Hunter, Liberace.
What's the name again?
It's called The Loved One from 1965. And Anjanette Comer, I think she has said it publicly that she sort of took a detour with a person she was involved with in a relationship and didn't do much acting at certain points. She came back, I think, later, and she's still, I think she lives in Texas now. I'm not 100% sure, but you can find an interview with her. There was one online, but the audio is not very good. She was at the Egyptian Theater, I think, or the American Cinematheque, or the Egyptian Theater. It's the same thing. I thought she was great, and that the music that she played was great. Yeah, she's only in here for just a couple minutes, but she's a very strong performer.
Yeah, I was also really impressed with her. I thought she was super convincing. So she's basically telling Alex, I had to give you an ultimatum because I know that you don't really love your wife and that you're just afraid. Anyhow, so she has this little like speech kind of, and I thought she just was really convincing. It just felt really heartfelt. She's really trying to show him that she believes in him and that, she's got a little bit of an edge to her, you can tell because she's like putting him in a corner, but at the same time, she has this sort of genuine love for him. So I thought she just portrayed all of that really well, really convincingly. I liked her brief performance in this episode for sure. And I just want to talk briefly about her apartment because I love to look at the scenery. Her apartment, it comes across as very glamorous. So it's full of white and gold and dark blue decor. And there's some really beautiful footstools. I was admiring her footstools. They're like white wooden footstools with these dark blue cushions on top and these really pretty white crisscross lines. Kind of, I think if you saw them, they'd be popular even today. They were just really pretty and standout pieces, statement pieces, I guess you would say. And then I have a tiny deep dive on her bird. I had to find out a little bit more about these birds. So I'm pretty sure it's a sulphur-crested cockatoo. And these birds can live up to 70 years in captivity.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so I was looking at like the bird's behavior, during this whole murder scene when Alex hits his mistress, hits her from behind so she doesn't see it coming. And in that moment, you don't actually see the violence, but you see the bird react, which is really cool. And the birds do that behavior when they are agitated, but also if they're surprised or excited or happy or interested in something. So it's hard to know exactly how they got the bird to do that. So often it's a sign of something that they're reacting to in a positive way, but they also do that when they're startled. Okay, a little bit of trivia. There are some cockatoos that have lived to 100 years old, Paul.
Wow.
There was one cockatoo named Cocky Bennett, this is from Wikipedia, who lived at a bar in Sydney. He reached an age of over 100 years old. By that point, he had lost his feathers and was, quote, naked for much of his life. And then his body was stuffed and preserved after his death. So if you're in Sydney and you want to see the famous Cocky Bennett cockatoo, you can go to Tom Ugly's Point and see his preserved body. And let's move on, Paul, to the Hollywood Bowl. So after he does the deed, I like the way they edited this because we don't exactly see him get back to his conductor's office, but we see his wife and his mother-in-law coming to see him before we know if he's actually in there. Yeah. So there's a little bit of suspense in that moment.
Yeah.
And this is when we hear the conversation about the canapes. So the mom is telling Gwyneth, like, make sure they don't serve the canapes too early because they'll get soggy. Did I say Gwyneth? I meant Blythe Danner, who is Janice. I can't remember what name I just used. So the mother is talking to the daughter, Janice, played by Blythe Danner. And so they're going to see Alex. Alex is in position. So he got away with his scheme. And then we move on and we find out that Columbo is at the vet's office. Mm-hmm. And who are we meeting for the first time, Paul?
His buddy, his little furry buddy, or short-haired buddy.
So this is the very first episode featuring Dog. And I had to find out how many episodes was Dog in. It was 9 episodes across the years. The first dog obviously passed away, so they had to replace him with a younger dog. And I saw that they actually would put makeup on the younger dog to make him look older.
Oh, no.
And there was a quote from Peter Falk where he says that that dog was spending more time in the makeup chair than he was to get that older look. But Columbo is at the vet's office, and we see the concert happening in the background. So the concert is in action. Mm-hmm. Oh, I guess we kind of forgot to mention that the symphony, I guess it's the manager, so not the conductor, but like his assistant or whoever, tells Alex that Jennifer Wales has not shown up for the performance, and Alex flips out. He's super angry, and he calls over to her apartment, and he has her phone number memorized, which his wife Janice immediately tunes into.
Yeah.
Is a little bit concerned.
The character's name is Billy Jones, his assistant, and it's played by James McEachin.
Mm-hmm. Has he done some other work, Paul?
Yeah, I think James was in a bunch of Matlock. Perry Mason, which Dean Hargrove produced a lot of. And Dean Hargrove was the producer of Columbo for the season 2 and on, or for a lot of them at least. But James was in another Columbo in 1978 called Make Me a Perfect Murder. I don't know that one offhand, but James is, I think, a really great performer.
I'm trying to think of who he is in Make Me a Perfect Murder, because I've seen that one.
Yeah, he was in a series that William Link and Richard Levinson wrote called Tenafly. And Tenafly was, I believe, the first show to have an African American in the lead as a, like a dramatic show. He plays a private investigator, and I watched the pilot, and it was really good. It was a little rushed, I think, in some regards, but he has to solve a crime. But he solves 2. Like, one is a familial one. His aunt calls him and says, "Hey, your uncle's missing," and also the main story of, like, is this guy guilty or not? And he was also in another William Link and Richard Levinson television movie that I've mentioned before called That Certain Summer, where Hal Holbrook and Martin Sheen are lovers, and Hal Holbrook's son doesn't know that his dad is gay. And it's about him. That certain summer, his son finds out. And it's a very, I thought, very poignant, well done television movie for the time. And in that, James McEachin plays a San Francisco trolley conductor, and he notices the son staying on the trolley the whole day, and he becomes concerned with him. So he plays a nice pivotal role for that movie that Levinson and Link wrote and produced. And he did a ton of television. He was also a really good writer. I've looked at some of his work. But yeah, he's a Korean War vet who almost died. He got shot and he got ambushed, and everybody in his army, the group that he was with, died except for him.
Whoa.
And then there was one guy who must have been in the back, who saved him. And I saw an interview with him, and he said, James McEachin said they had to be quiet because the Chinese were in Korea at this point, and they were the ones who killed everybody that he was with. And the guy who found James, the American soldier, this blonde-haired Caucasian guy, he had to carry him, and it was hard for him. So he wanted to go off and see, if he could see where the enemy was and how close they were to the American soldiers. And James got so upset, he thought that the guy was going to leave him, so he wanted to shoot him or throw a grenade at him.
Wow. But
the guy came back, and he never forgot how he felt about that. And he was always very upset with the way that he was thinking. But he's a very interesting person. He's still alive. I think he lives out here in California.
Wow.
But yeah, he's a really, really cool creator, and, had a very interesting life. And he played Peter at the gates. His favorite role to do was in this Catholic show called Insight. It reminded me of a Charlie Kaufman movie where he played this guy called Dr. Peter Gates, but he plays Peter, and the people who come into his office don't realize that they're dead, and he has to explain it to them, and he shows them clips of their life, and they talk about how they behaved on Earth, and it's really interesting, really cool. So that's James McEachin, very quickly.
Oh, yeah, that sounds really interesting. Wow. Yeah, I'm glancing at his IMDb. He has an impressive resume here, impressive number of appearances in TV series. And I love that Levinson and Link kept working with him, that they saw his talents and kept working with him. And yeah, I just looked at the other episode you mentioned, Make Me a Perfect Murder, and I totally remember him now. He plays the man who works in the film booth to project the film for this studio. So I don't know the name. There's probably a name for that
projectionist
job. But he kind of rolls the films so that the studio executives. There you go. He plays the projectionist, and he's kind of an important clue in that movie. So Columbo has a couple conversations with him. And he does a good job. Very cool. All right, well, let's move along here. So after the concert, Alex is like, that was amazing. And then he learns from Janice and his assistant, James McEachin, whose name, what's his character name? Billy, that Jennifer Wells is dead. And so Benedict goes over to Jennifer's apartment because he realizes he must have dropped his flower at her apartment. So his boutonniere has fallen off. And I wanted to point out when he goes back to his apartment, so Columbo's there and Columbo's, can't understand why this super talented woman, he also talks a lot about her looks. She's a very beautiful woman, why she would take her own life. And there's this cool moment when Benedict shows up to the apartment and he's trying to very casually find his flower, where they do that moment of editing on the sunglasses that we saw in Death Lends a Hand. We saw that over the eyeglasses where they showed the viewer kind of what the villain was seeing with that little editing trick. So I thought that was really cool. So we see Benedict's sunglasses finding the boutonniere flower that he accidentally knocked off near the piano when he killed Jennifer Wells. So I thought that was a cool little editing feature and a callback to the earlier Columbo. And Columbo also meets another kind of important character, which is a young girl who is a neighbor of Jennifer Wells. And I thought I wrote her name down, and now I can't remember.
Is it Audrey? Yeah.
Oh, Audrey. So in this, it's Audrey. So she's a neighbor, and he meets her, and she tells him not to leave the dog trapped in the car with the windows all rolled up.
She's mad.
He's like, oh, yeah, she is mad. She's
Rightfully
mad
so.
This whole episode. Yeah, she's pretty angry that pretty much the whole time that she has to talk to Columbo. All right, so Columbo meets the villain, and Columbo notices him picking up a flower off the floor, and Benedict says, oh, I must have just knocked it off just now. But Columbo, I'm sure he's registering everything. And then Benedict goes home. He's filmed by the press on his way out of Jennifer Wells' apartment, and he just makes a brief statement that, I can't remember exactly what he says, but we've lost a great musical talent tonight, something like that. And then he returns home to Blythe Danner, to Janice. I keep calling her by her name. He returns home to Janice, who's asleep on the sofa waiting up. Well, she's trying to wait up for him. And she's wearing kind of a cool white lace nightgown that has these like funky ribbons kind of randomly weaved into it here and there. So it's kind of a cool...
Yeah, that was very interesting.
Cool look for her. Yeah, it was interesting.
That could be almost Burt Miller, Liz.
Yeah, no, I agree that this was cooler than some of the other looks for sure. Maybe she brought her own robe to set. Who knows?
True.
But I thought she did a really great job. He comes home and she's trying to wait up for him, but clearly she's fallen asleep. But I think the first thing she says is, I'm not asleep, or I'm awake, something like that. Just like...
Trouble sleeping.
Yeah. But she's like, no, I'm here. I'm here for you. I'm awake. I want to connect with you. And according to IMDb, the actress was about 5 months pregnant with Gwyneth Paltrow during filming of this episode.
Oh wow!
So that's little baby Gwyneth in there, in that little bitty belly.
Yeah, she's good. She's questioning him. She's obviously, I think, younger, but she loves him. But she's also, why did you marry me? Why me? And I think we all realize why.
Yeah. Yeah. That's kind of sad, that moment. That's one of the pieces that I really love of this episode is that I feel like in moments like this and at the end, it gets to somewhat of this deeper emotions. Like I feel for her in this moment. She is not just a caricature, but she has a little bit more depth. She's more vulnerable. Like sometimes with these characters, you don't see that softer side in these episodes. But I feel like this episode has a little bit more of a movie feeling to it, where, the character, her in particular, she's a bit more three-dimensional. I mean, I love Columbo's. I'm not saying that all the characters are two-dimensional and overly simplified, but I feel like this relationship between Janice and Alex takes this episode to I don't know, it just feels a little bit more real and more dramatic than some of the other episodes where you don't have that, where the relationships don't feel so real.
Yeah. Yeah, she felt that her performance of it, and then the dialogue she says, the confusion that she has is very real, and it's modern in a way that you tell your husband or your wife what you're mad about or upset about because you love them, so you're able to be more than one dimension, like you were saying. She's good in this. I watched 2 movies that she did right around this time. One was called Dr. Cook's Garden, based on Ira Levine book. Ira Levine also wrote Rosemary's Baby, which had John Cassavetes. But in Dr. Cook's Garden, she played the assistant to Bing Crosby, and Bing Crosby is great in that film. It's a scary, weird film. And then she was another one with Alan Alda, To Kill a Clown, and Heath Lamberts plays her husband. It's based on a book by Algis Budrys called Master of the Hounds. It's very much like Straw Dogs, the movie Straw Dogs, which is also based on a book. But this one, the Master of the Hounds, came out before the Straw Dogs one. But To Kill a Clown was very dark movie. I don't know if it ever actually came out. I heard sort of conflicting things on the internet. So, but I watched it, and it was I don't know if it ever came out to the theater. But Alan Alda plays a basically crazy kind of person who wants to control Blythe Danner and her husband. He's like, anyway, it was very dark, good. It was a good movie, but she was good. She's good. I like watching her stuff.
Yeah, I did. I just looked at her a little bit. I had a couple notes here. Where did I put them? She won a number of Emmys for her work, and she also won a Tony Award.
Oh, wow. Awesome.
And then people might recognize her most recently from the Meet the Fockers series of movies.
Yeah.
With Robert De Niro and, is it Ben Stiller or his? Those are funny. Those are funny movies. Okay, so we have that sweet moment. Moving along here, I just wanted to talk about the scene where the next day Columbo shows up at the Benedict's house, and he wants to talk to Mr. Benedict, and the butler lets him in, and almost as soon as Columbo's inside, the butler just yells for Mr. Benedict instead of going to find him. It's so funny, and it reminds me of with the kids, if I tell them like, hey, dinner's ready, can you go tell Dad or Hazel or Beatrice, can you go tell them that dinner's ready? And they just stand next to me, and then they're like, dinner's ready. Yep. Instead of actually going anywhere, they just like, I could have done that.
Same.
I feel the same way in this moment. Like, yeah.
Same here.
Columbo could have yelled for Mr. Benedict, but I guess that's what the butler does. So
yeah, he was a groundling, Pat.
I like that little comic moment.
Pat Morita.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He was the Karate Kid teacher.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but yeah, he at Groundlings, you'll see his picture up.
Oh, that's cool.
I did a few courses at Groundlings. It was a really good school.
Yeah, for sure.
It is a good school.
Yeah. So Columbo shows up and he's there. He says he just wants his autograph, but Columbo, he's actually collecting all kinds of little tidbits of information, and he goes down this rabbit hole trying to find out how much the house was worth. But he starts out by asking, what do you pay in property taxes? And so from the property taxes, he back calculates what they paid for the house. So Benedict says he paid $750,000 for the house, and this is 1972 or so, which is about $4.8 million today. So that's not a bad price for that home. And then Columbo mentions his salary. He says he makes $11,000 a year, and that is equivalent to about $68,000 a year in 2020 dollars. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And then I feel like I had one other.
Cassavetes looks like he has a haircut in this scene.
Oh, really?
His hair looks different, yeah. Maybe it's just styled more. But when I first saw it, I thought like, wait, did they shoot the scene later? Because his outfit looks a little different with the polka dots, although that could be, the new Grady Hunt style.
Yeah.
But his hair looks different to me. It looks shorter on the sides.
Oh, interesting. Well, so today I had to find out, what does the conductor of the LA Philharmonic make today? Do you have any guess what the conductor makes every year for your orchestra, Paul?
500,000?
More than that.
$1 million? $2 million?
More than that. Well, $1.5 million a year.
Wow.
So it's kind of interesting, right? Because part of the premise of this movie is that Alex needs his wife's money to live in this home and, whatever. Or maybe just to have his job. I don't know. But he probably doesn't need her money to have a pretty lavish lifestyle if the conductors of the Philharmonic have always been paid that well. I mean, $1.5 million a year salary, that's pretty 1%-y. That's a top tiny 1% income right there.
But at this time, though, but Columbo is saying that, how could you afford this?
Yeah, he is. So that makes me think maybe the conductor wasn't paid very well back then.
Yeah, there's superstars now that are here.
But in today's dollars, the conductor would have no problem covering that house.
Yeah.
That's 3 years salary.
Yeah, today's. But I think it's much bigger. They're more superstars. I mean, I think they've probably always been well known, but now as Hollywood changes, when they get a conductor here, it's very high profile.
Yeah, probably you're right. Well, anyhow, we find out a little bit about the money, and as you said, maybe this is way beyond his means, and it really is his in-laws' money. Okay, so let's move along here, Paul. So Columbo is collecting more clues, collects some clues at the mechanics, and then we have a moment where Janice is questioning things, and we see her with her mom having lunch at a restaurant, and she's trying to get a little gossip from her mom about Jennifer Wells. And I kind of love this back and forth, Paul, between Janice and her mom.
Mm-hmm.
Janice asks, "Do you think men found her pretty?" or something to that effect. And her mom says, "What a silly question. She was a pianist, the poor dear." "It's something that should concern none of us. Now I'll order for you." So this kind of starts to paint a picture a little bit of Janice, that, she's she gets pushed around a little bit. So, her mom orders for her, and
mm-hmm.
she feels really insecure in her relationship. So we're kind of getting a picture of her life and who she is. And Columbo continues to collect clues. So he's collected a clue now from the typewriter, Jennifer Wells's typewriter, where the suicide note was found. And we know from the opening scene that Benedict typed that note and then put it into the typewriter. And Columbo has discovered that the note does not actually line up with the typewriter keys. And just a quick old tech alert. I had to find out more about this typewriter because it is adorable. And I wish I had to use a typewriter sometimes, because if I could have one like that, I mean, it would just make things so fun. And it is a vintage Smith Corona Skywriter portable typewriter with a carrying case. And you can purchase one, a vintage one, online for about $250. So if you want Jennifer Wells's typewriter, there are still some out there in the world, and they're pretty adorable. So, Paul, shall we move on? So I guess there's a couple other clues that Columbo collects here, and we can just briefly touch on. So one of Jennifer Wells's fellow musicians showed up at her apartment the night of her body being discovered. His name is Paul Rifkin, and Columbo goes to Paul Rifkin's jazz. It's like a trio or quartet practice that's happening in a nightclub after hours. And so Columbo finds out in that encounter that Jennifer Wells told Paul Rifkin that she had found an important new man. And so this is also continuing to get Columbo on the, focused on Alex Benedict, because clearly he would fit that category of an important man. And then we have an interesting plot twist after this conversation. So Columbo goes back to see Audrey, the young girl who lives near Jennifer Wells. And Audrey says that she has seen the man that Jennifer Wells was seeing. So Columbo brings Audrey to an orchestra rehearsal, and he asks her to point out who the man was. And instead of pointing to Alex Benedict, she points to Paul Rifkin. So this is an interesting plot twist where we find out that Jennifer Wells was also seeing Paul Rifkin at the same time that she was seeing Alex Benedict. But Paul explains that he could never have killed her. He loved her. He wouldn't have. And I think, and Columbo clearly believes him and doesn't think that he's actually guilty of anything. Is there anything that you want to go back to, Paul, that we've skimmed over here?
I thought that was odd that he would bring her there, in front of all those people. It seems like he would be smarter to use a photograph, but I guess at that time they wouldn't have done something like that. But now, you'd have to show them a picture or something like that.
Yeah, or a lineup, right?
You wouldn't want to bring a child to. So when I just watching, it was a little bothersome.
Yeah, I think it's really tricky to have a child in these shows because, you wouldn't really want to bring a child into a room where you think a murderer is. And you also can't really talk to a child without their parent right there.
Exactly, yeah. I loved that actor, Paul Rifkin, James Olson. He is such a powerful actor. I think he actually is playing that music. I think they said something about that on IMDb. But yeah, he was great.
That's cool. Yeah, I thought he did a really great job. And I was also wondering, I didn't get to look it up, but I was also wondering if he was also a musician, if he was actually playing that. I thought that was really cool. Yeah, he did a good job. He was really convincing. All right, well, let's move on. So we have this new plot twist. Paul Rifkin was also seeing Jennifer Wells, but he was clearly in love with her and wouldn't have hurt her. And so the board of directors of the orchestra puts him on a temporary suspension with pay while they sort out who the actual murderer was. And then that brings us basically to the last scene here, where Columbo shows up at the Hollywood Bowl and says he just wants to talk to Benedict one more time because obviously, Alex Benedict is very frustrated with him at this point and tired of seeing him and feels harassed by him. And Columbo says, I just want to talk to you one more time. I swear we'll just clear it all up. Janice is there too. Janice is watching his rehearsal. And Janice has been very uncomfortable, as we pointed out. She's been really uncomfortable this whole time with what happened to Jennifer Wells and whether or not her husband had any connection to it. So Janice is like, well, let's just clear it up. Let's just figure this out, clear it up, and be done. And so Columbo has pulled up two separate videotapes, one of the concert, close-ups of Benedict conducting, and then one of Benedict leaving Jennifer Wells' apartment that same night. And he is focusing on the flower, the boutonniere. So in the footage during the concert, clearly the boutonniere is not there because he accidentally knocked it off at Jennifer Wells's apartment. And then in the footage where Benedict is leaving Jennifer Wells's apartment and he gives a brief statement to the press about we've lost a wonderful talent, suddenly the boutonniere is back on his tuxedo. And Columbo freezes the film with a close-up of Benedict's face and just his upper chest where you can see the flower really clearly. And he asks Benedict to explain what happened or explain how he's wearing a flower in that moment. And he can't. And he says, I must have put it on after the concert because I was, upset about Jennifer Wells. And Columbo asks Janice, do you remember that? Is that how you remember it? And she says no. So she totally, she's honest and gives up her husband in that moment. And she says, I could have stood for anything but not murder. Oh, it's kind of heartbreaking, that last scene between the two of them. It's like I said in the beginning, she's really, or not in the beginning, but earlier when we were talking about her performance, that she's so vulnerable. And in this moment, she's also really vulnerable. And then he is also really vulnerable with Columbo. He says, okay, he goes up to Columbo. He's like, this is humiliating. How do we just wrap this up? And, what's the next step? And this is one of my favorite endings because of how real she feels in this moment and how real he feels in this moment. And even though it isn't like a sweet, button, with Greenhouse Jungle we were talking about, in the ending of that one, this woman who's been so angry all of a sudden is happy and chuckling with Columbo. In this episode, it's like a bummer. It's a bummer all around. The villain is caught and he feels bad, and his wife is upset. I don't know. I think it's a really strong ending, a strong scene.
Yeah, he whispers to her, "I'm guilty," and he calls Columbo genius. But I think he's sincere when he says genius.
Yeah, for sure.
I got some of the script from the Writers Guild library.
Awesome.
From the revision from 6/30/1972, and him saying genius and whispering in her ear, he's guilty. I can't remember his exact words, but yeah, none of that's in this revision. So I have a feeling there was a lot of improv, or at least development of who these characters are. Because if you look at the directors, it lists this film as this episode as having Colasanto, the guy from Cheers, Nicholas Colasanto, John Cassavetes, Peter Falk, all as being directors of this particular episode. But yeah, that ending is good.
Really good. Well, that brings us to the end. Paul, do you want to go first? How would you rate this episode?
I would give this like a 9.5. There was so much back and forth between, cat and mouse between Cassavetes and Peter Falk, that you really got to see that, Columbo kept trying so hard, like when he was at the car place, talking to him about the car and the speedometer, and then the typewriter at the Hollywood Bowl. And there were all these really good moments of, he almost has him, and then Cassavetes just comes back at him. But they're not all these scenes are the same. They're all kind of different. At first, they're kind of chummy at the stairs when he talks about the price of the house, and it just sort of develops. There's technology in this one. I always remember this one for the technology for some reason, and seeing it again a couple times, I liked it a lot more. And it's not just that. It's not just Columbo figuring out the crime. I mean, he couldn't have got it without Janice's help. The music, it's got famous Mozart music in it. The cast is so great. Everybody, all the smallest scenes. So yeah, I would say like 9.5. But I haven't seen all of Columbo, so
yeah. Yeah, no, I would agree with you, Paul. This is way up there in terms of the quality all around. Just the acting and the characters that they wrote and then performed. And even the story is really interesting. There's all these tiny clues that Columbo has to find. So yeah, I think I would also probably give it a 9.5, maybe slightly lower because the costumes, are a little bit drab. But it's way up there for me for sure. It's a really good one. Okay, so let's do our trivia, Paul.
Okay, so the mother, played by Myrna Loy, Lizzie Fielding, her mother helped the Hollywood Bowl get made and helped with the and knew the people in the Los Angeles Philharmonic.
Oh, Paul, this is a good one. Okay, I'm gonna say true. I'm just gonna go first instinct there. True.
Yep. Della Williams was her mom. Yeah, they're from Montana and they came out here. They loved California.
Yay.
Yeah. Okay. So mom and dad and I went backstage at the Hollywood Bowl. We're after a concert.
I'm going to say false, Paul.
Why false? Why couldn't we do that?
Well, tell me that you did. Let's hear it.
We did. We did.
What?
Yeah. We went to see Manhattan Transfer, Big Dad Voodoo Daddy, and the piano player of Big Dad Voodoo Daddy, Josh, had invited us. My wife, St. John, knew his wife, and so we went back there and met the lead singer of Big Dad Voodoo Daddy.
Oh, that's awesome. That's so cool. I'm so glad you get to go to the Hollywood Bowl. That's such a cool place.
Yeah, I took the boys there to see, they showed the movie Black Panther. So they took out all the music from the film, and the actual composer and the musicians were there, and they would do the music during the film.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, it was great.
So cool.
Okay, last one, Liz. So Cassavetes and Peter Falk, they did a bunch of movies together, and one of their most famous ones that they did was called Mikey and Nicky, and it was directed by one of the few female directors of Hollywood for a certain period of time, unfortunately, Elaine May, and she wrote the roles for Peter Falk and John Cassavetes, and John Cassavetes plays, I think, Nicky, and he is a accountant for the mob. And Peter Falk is trying to get him out, and Nicky thinks he has a hit on him. It's a very dramatic film that they did a lot of improvising on and developing of the character. So when this movie came out in the 70s to really good reviews, it's quite a film. I've seen it. I liked it a lot. It has a very famous acting teacher in it playing the head of the mob. His name escapes me at the moment. Sanford Meisner. And he does a lot of blinking in the movie, which I thought was interesting. But so when they first remastered this film, they had to clean up the prints, and the people that did it, I met those people, and there's a short documentary on the DVD about them, of the people who remastered it, and they interview them, and I've met them before, like talked to them and been to the place.
I'm going to say true. You had so much detail for that, Paul. It has to be true.
Yeah, it's true.
Yes. Oh, yeah. 3 for 3. Woo!
That's right. Wait, you got one of them wrong, didn't you?
No, I thought I got them all. Oh, no, you're right. I got
with Mom and Dad.
Okay.
Liz, come on.
I was ready to take
steal
credit.
One from me.
I was ready to steal one from you. I was so excited. I guess getting 2 right feels like getting 3 right, because I usually get none of them right.
That's true.
Okay, 2 for 3. Not bad.
All right.
All right, Paul. Well, let's wrap this up. We'd like to thank Maxime Gervais for our theme song, Columbo.
Yes, Maxime.
Thank you. And if you'd like to add to our conversation, send us some interesting trivia or tidbits or your memories and your connection to Colombo. You can email us at trenchcoatcigar@gmail.com. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram. We are at trenchcoatcigar, and that's where we post photos of our drink and snack and our favorite moments from the episode. So head on over to Instagram and follow us on there. And Paul, just one more thing.
What's that, Liz?
Thanks for listening.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Trench coat, cigare, là toujours. Colombo, au mon beau Colombo. Pas de gun, pas de look, what a look. Colombo, trench coat, cigare, là toujours. Colombo, au mon beau Colombo. Pas de gun, pas de look, what a look. Passion meurtrière, folie passagère. Rien à foutre devant l'expertise policière. T'avais un plan sans faille, pensez à chaque détail. L'inspecteur